Firstly, I want to say that no Jeeps were harmed in the making of this presentation. Apologies to any of my following speakers that used Jeep images. I've used it myself. I've seen so many of them. I'm thinking of putting up a Jeep collection of Jeeps next to schools with safe kiddies and something for things. I'll come back to that later in terms of some of the things we need to address here. Firstly, a little bit about prpl. prpl is an open source foundation created around by Imagination, but it's independent of Imagination. It's all about open source around MIPS, but open to all architectures. It's not about optimizing for MIPS. It's about producing code and solutions that are open because we believe open standards and maximum competition in the supply chain is the way to go. And it's in that context that I want to talk to you this afternoon. So I want to start with, if you remember, three things from my talk, three words: consumers, ecosystems, and sheep. Okay? Let's start with consumers. Consumers are a very, very key part of what we as a community have to tackle about ecosystem, because this is a mass market issue. One of the things that IoT is about is a mass market, whether it's 5 billion, 20 billion, doesn't matter. It's a lot of devices that will be used by consumers that understand nothing about anything that's been talked about this afternoon. But they need to feel confident about it. And thanks to people like the speakers we've heard this morning, hacking the Tesla, hacking kettles, all that sort of stuff, we need that. That will continue. That is great because it makes people aware. But if we're not very careful, we will actually prejudice the rate at which we can get this adopted. And that will affect everyone in this room in terms of our ability to move our businesses forward in terms of this. So consumers are extremely important. And this is one of the things that is important for us because it is a changing world and consumers don't wait for the things that we do. Their expectations have been shifted by various markets. And so if you actually look at a lot of secure platforms today, we think it isn't reflecting what consumers expect. Consumers expect boxes and devices and things to do more than they used to. For example, the humble TV is no longer just a TV. Not only has an advanced user interface, it's going to be streaming over-the-top content as well as receiving broadcast content. It will also act as a focal point for your home security system, perhaps. It may also be used as a hub for home control. And indeed, we've just heard one of the major manufacturers, Samsung, announcing their TV will also function as a home gateway. We expect a lot more of that to happen. This is changing very quickly. But if we look at a lot of the solutions out in security, we just don't think that they're moving fast enough. And that's why Imagination was delighted when IOTSF was set up, because it requires such a broad community to tackle the things, to make we deliver security in a form that consumers will accept is fundamental, whether you're in automotive or consumer or agriculture or wherever. So with that, just want to do a little test here because everybody's getting a bit jaded and so on. I just want to have a show of hands of everybody who thinks this IOTSF event today is great. Everybody think it's great? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, ooh, some half hands and some. How many people put their hands up but felt a bit of a git doing so? Anybody willing to admit that? Thank you, Neil. There's always one. The reason for that is sheep. This is not an insult you, this is a very intelligent group of people in this room. The reality is when we're creating complex systems, almost inevitably, we don't start with a clean sheet of paper. We build on what has gone before. And never have I seen that more being the case than in secure systems. And what that means is people keep using systems that have gone before because somebody else has gone through so much pain to get these things validated. It could be a payment system. It could be a smart card system. It could be a secure delivery for streaming video, to name three examples. But you see a lot of times when people are putting these systems together, to get a mass market product, you actually need to use things that are as trusted as possible. So you'll often go for what has gone before. And that's holding us all up. It's time for disruption. That is why I found the talk this morning about the Tesla hacking so interesting. I refer to Tesla quite often. The Tesla effect in automotive. Somebody finally sat down and said, the architecture of a car, it's time for us to rethink how cars are built. And that's what Tesla did. I was heartened. I thought they were already doing a great job. They've just gone up another notch. Thank you, Mark. To show that when you rethink a system, not only will it be much better, it'll usually be simpler too. It's time we have to think through this with security. So another thing that worries me is that system designers, when using other things, are surprisingly naive as to what's proprietary and what is not. And this is something we need to be careful about, because the difference with IoT compared to the PC era or the mobile phone era is it is a much, much more fragmented market. And we've all used Robin's excellent diagram in the past in terms of the sheer fragmentation in IoT. That means that fragmentation is going to just make it that much harder to put these systems together. And so the temptation is to use a brand, a name, a thing that you've seen elsewhere and used. But be careful, because if we do that, we will lock ourselves in and you will end up creating great polarizations that will actually mean far fewer people can actually participate in developing this industry. So be careful of these lock-ins. And of course, that is a baited reference to what I'm going to get to. Also, what I see is a lot of things when we look at these secure services, certainly from the multimedia or payment point of view, is a tendency to say we certify something as secure. That fundamental statement to me is at odds with the idea of where security, like all of these things, need to go, which is a consumer expects a dynamic, continuously updated, continuously new services type environment in whatever they do. And security must work within that world. To me, the traditional model of certifying a system, a box, or whatever is increasingly at odds with that. And so I see each of these as factors that are holding up security moving forward. And that's why it's so important for us to work together to be able to solve these issues. Another issue that we particularly face as Imagination, who, as some of you may know, is an intellectual property company doing various processors for chips. We're best known for our PowerVR GPUs, we have our MIPS CPUs, we have our Insigma communications. These are different processors. And hence, mind the gap. There are huge holes in people's perception of what you need to secure. Now, this is particularly focused on the edge devices. But the thing is, in order to make an edge device efficient, high performance, ultra low power, run for a year or 10 on batteries, it's not just about a processor. It's got other processors in there that will make it efficient, and they will all share memory. So when you've got mainstream applications, if you look in Android land, a lot of the popular apps you'll see have a certain level of security built into them using software and other mechanisms to be able to secure them. That's all fine. That all works because it is a level of grade, and we have our various scares in each of these applications, but that's kind of okay. It's livable at the moment. When we get to the higher level of secure things, today's thing is to create a secure zone. And in that secure zone, you put the secure stuff. And that has done us very well in moving to the next level. We wouldn't have smart cards without it. And there's a number of people in this room that have done a great job in moving us on to getting to this level. However, what you're now talking with these more flexible platforms is that you've got a number of very different applications, like payment, like streaming content, like health data, utilities. These are very, very different worlds. And that's why we feel it's time to move on. We think a lot of the security thinking, by the nature of how the industry has evolved, is very CPU-centric. It's come from the sort of higher end, moved itself down in various ways, but is still very much around CPU thinking. That's not surprising because software is so crucial to this, but that means it's not embracing today's processors, which are going to find their way not just into high-end tablets and smartphones, they're going to go into the deepest embedded devices very, very quickly. We're doing it today. This one secure zone, we think, is simply not enough. You need this separation, but you need to separate these secure applications from each other because they don't naturally coexist. You've got to be careful about proprietary hardware and proprietary software simply because in an IoT world, there is simply too much breadth of application for us to afford to be locking down to any one particular thing. And so with these characteristics in mind, we felt that it is important to move this stuff on. Now, when looking at this, we spent several years talking mainly to OEMs. Now, our focus is in areas like automotive and consumer, mobile, of course, but then increasingly talking into industrial markets. And when we played this out to them, we got an awful lot of nodding heads. So we're fairly confident that this is an issue, but no one party can solve it. And that's why prpl created we call the security peg. The peg is just a prpl engineering group. And the idea is to create a next generation solution by bringing enough people together with enough different vested interests to create something that is truly neutral. The players we've got in there, obviously Imagination is in there, we have Qualcomm in there, we have Broadcom in here, we have people like Imperis here from the UK, Genig from China, Kern Concept from Germany, and there's a number of more recent companies that have joined to add to the list. And of course, Broadcom now Avago, or becoming Avago. So we've got some very serious hitters in this team to tackle this, because this is a big issue. All of us potentially suffer if we don't move this security on. The basic things we're looking as the premises are it needs to be multi-domain, more than one secure domain. It needs to be enforced using hardware separation to do that. It needs to be heterogeneous because efficient systems, the way the silicon technology is going, must embrace more than just a CPU-centric model. But it must enable APIs to enable the broadest number of devices, from the smallest embedded devices to mainstream mobile up to high-end, in a consistent way. And of course, because security is hard, there needs to be a lot of guidance to make it as easy as possible for as many people to implement this system as we can, which is a fairly tall order. So the way that we're going about this is basically to focus on the hardware separation using hardware virtualization. Hardware virtualization is a technology that is in most medium to high-end processors today. What we've done, and a number of others are doing, is we're bringing hardware virtualization now to embedded processors. And people don't realize this, but this is a technology you think of as quite high-end. It's coming to embedded very, very quickly. For example, to our partners, Microchip is shipping sampling a chip now called the PIC32 MZEF, which has MIPS with hardware virtualization in it. Very cost-effective microcontroller. There's another partner of ours, Altair, doing an LTE Cat1 modem with a similar processor in there. So these things are coming out very quickly. And this enables us to start thinking seriously about using hardware virtualization as a means of being able to achieve hardware separation for multiple domains. So we're building on that to have a system that enables you to have, in principle, as many containers as the hardware can allow. These microcontrollers, for example, can enable 4 to 8 containers. Higher-end processors up to 200 or more. It is heterogeneous because we're also putting virtualization in our GPUs. They're already available in our GPUs today. And in the future, our communications engine and so on. Basically, everything that talks to the shared memory that's in these SoCs. And that has to ultimately include the fabric itself, the things that the buses and architecture in a chip that joins these various processes together. So this is a solution which is intended to be cost-effective, because there's no way this works in the IoT era unless it can work from deeply embedded microcontrollers upwards, is very, very scalable. It is agnostic to any processor architecture, be it CPU, GPU, or anything else, and is endorsed by some of the leading players in the business. That's what we're trying to do with prpl Security. Example of this is with a home gateway, is where if you look at what a home gateway needs to do, already today you can see the issues. You see the communications coming in, where you've got the basic communications coming in for the core use, but it's also being used as a public hotspot, and it's now being used to deploy a number of local services. Those need to be isolated. So the way we do that is by being able to create multiple secure domains, one for each of these different application areas. The way this works, I left out more detail just in the interest of time, and I'm glad I did. The idea is that when you start this chip up, you will have various processes starting up, but you'll start, obviously, in the trusted environment. And a trusted hypervisor will start up and initialize the virtualization across all the chip. And from there, everything is secured before one line of code is executed in any one of these secure containers. And that enables us to isolate these areas into completely different worlds. Now, if for those devices that haven't got virtualization everywhere, you can use the solutions we're using today of para-virtualization in those processes, and there's a number of great suppliers here in the UK doing a good job of that today. So this is another big thing about this. This is evolutionary. It isn't an all-or-nothing solution. We can migrate to this. But as was fortunately mentioned by the previous speaker, this is about moving the next level of hardware separation. And it can be cost-effective from low-end to high-end. And that enables us to create a new levels of security than before. And that's what purple's trying to do, is to standardize that. So the framework, therefore, needs to look at a whole series of different things, everything from how we do secure boot, key management in there, the crypto, we've already talked about this, securing debugging so that that doesn't become an attack area. The content streams we need to look at as well. How is that all plugged in? Containers, when you're running a higher level operating system like Linux, how do you define those containers to interact in such an environment? Hypervisors, how do you manage hypervisors within each of the containers, and of course the trusted hypervisor underneath, and also the provisioning of tenants. So that's what we're trying to define, is the hardware and software components so that everyone can play in building these end-to-end systems. And our job is to de-skill it to the maximum amount possible so that whether you're building a connected data center or a connected water sprinkler, you will be able to secure these applications. So you can't treat security in isolation for IoT, and we've heard a number of talks today about this. You've got to look at it in context of where IoT is going. And we see three different worlds, and they are different worlds. The world of devices is what I'm mainly talking about. That's edge devices. But then you've got the world of services. That's where all the data centers are and all the standards around there. Then the application world. These really are different international communities that are pretending to sort of collaborate and so on. You've got to bring them together. And so another thing that Purple is starting to look at now is how to define the way to a reference framework to bring these together, using international standards and existing open source as much as possible, because the security is nothing if it doesn't work through the entire system. We can't, however well we secure the device, and we've heard a number of references to it today, then you need to make sure that that security will propagate through the system, or else you're just moving the attack point. Now, you'll always have an attack point somewhere, but this is a means, if we can embrace all of the works are there, and it's about bringing this together, we believe that by thinking about interoperability in IoT alongside the security and bringing them together as soon as we can, that is absolutely essential for making IoT successful. And that is one of the reasons why we have companies like Qualcomm and Broadcom on the board, because they agree with this in this view. From Imagination's point of view, a lot of our reason for being so excited about this is we're already well known and doing a lot of work in mobile and automotive and consumer. But in these edge devices, if you think they're all going to be extremely small and dumb, think again. These are going to get smarter and smarter because that's the way to localize data and also to be pragmatic. You can't just shove everything up to the cloud and expect the cloud to sort it all out. It won't work, and especially not in real-time systems. So we're spending a lot of time on how to integrate these things to make it cost-effective to build those billions of devices where they're not going to cost $100 each. Sorry, £100, wrong country. And so what I'm showing here is an example of the various things a sensor hub might do. Because very quickly what we found is when we look at these, you need hardware separation and multiple secure domains, even at these edge devices. Isolating the different streams of data, being able to protect, as we heard from the previous speaker, from commands coming in and making sure that you're being able to filter those. So a lot of our work is about how to make this embedded world cost-effective whilst being able to do these concepts. We're also doing work because we recognize there's a changes in the supply chain in electronics as to where the expertise lies. And this is why we feel it is so imperative that we come together to try and solve these things. These devices have to talk to hubs. These hubs will talk to hierarchies of hubs, each with increasing levels of intelligence, finally getting to the central data center. There's a lot here. You need to look at the end-to-end system. We're building our own system end-to-end, where we do both boards, our creator boards are our low-cost development boards, Flow Cloud is our infrastructure. And through this, we're learning how practically to look at these APIs so they will work across the system, not just in the device. So these are just examples from where imagination is coming from to do this. Now, in our case, what we're doing is we're implementing our version of the prpl security we call OmniShield, and that's just imagination's interpretation of the prpl security. And we hopefully will see many more companies doing the same. So I'm going to wrap up, hopefully a few minutes ahead of time here. Ecosystem is the third word, because that is what is so crucial. I think if you take away from today, apart from my three words, is that the complexity of building these end-to-end systems is mind-blowing in my opinion. I've worked in various areas over 30-odd years. And when you look at the end-to-end issues and listen to the excellent talks we've heard today, the number of different domains of expertise is incredible. We've got to bring that ecosystem together of complementary expertise to create a universal solution so it will be universally deployed and trusted by consumers. That's what prpl's trying to achieve. We'd like as many of you to join us as possible. I'm pleased that some people are already joining us. Paul was just pointing out BT, for example, is already joining us and helping on some of the work here. We've started by putting out this security guidance document, which is free to download from the prpl website. Please go and take a look. Get engaged, come and talk to us about this and join the group. But we believe this ecosystem is the only way that we are going to make IoT really scale and move at anything like the speed that consumers will trust for us to take to move this technology forward. And I do hope that many of you will join us, and indeed the IoTSF, which I think thanks very much to the NMI and to John in particular for the work he's put into making this happen. This community is an incredible community we're looking at here. Let's try and use this community to make UK a leading player in this next generation. Thanks very much.